Have you ever worked hard for years and still felt broke? You save a little, then something breaks the plan. A bill, a bad month, a new phone you did not really need. This lesson is told in simple language to help you practice listening and improve your English, while you learn something that can change how you handle money forever. By the end, you will see money the way wealthy people see it, not as something to spend, but as something to direct. Most people think rich people got lucky. A better job, a rich family, a lucky break. Sometimes that is true, but if you study the people who built real wealth from nothing, you find something else. A pattern. A way of thinking that has almost nothing to do with luck. Wealthy people do not think about money the way most people do. They think in three simple ideas: assets, patience, self-control. That is it. No secret formula, no hidden trick. Just three habits of the mind, used again and again for years. Own assets, not habits. Say that to yourself now. You will hear it again because it matters that much. Today you will learn how the wealthy see a dollar. You will learn why they wait when everyone else rushes. And you will learn how self-control, not income, decides who stays rich and who stays stuck. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Buy what pays you. Here is a question most people never ask. Does this thing put money in my pocket, or does it take money out? A car takes money out. Gas, repairs, insurance every month. A rental property, a small business, a share in a company. These put money in. The rich call the first kind a liability. They call the second kind an asset. Poor thinking says, I earned this money, so I should enjoy it now. Rich thinking says, I earned this money, so I should put some of it to work before I enjoy the rest. Think about a man named Daniel. Daniel worked at a warehouse for 11 years. Every raise he got, he spent on a better car, a bigger television, nicer clothes. His income grew, his wealth did not. He was not lazy. He was not foolish. He simply never asked the one question that matters. Does this pay me, or does it cost me? Across town, a woman named Priya worked the same kind of job for less money. But every month, she took a small piece of her paycheck and bought a tiny share of ownership in businesses she believed in. Some months it was $50, some months it was $10. It did not feel like much, but she was buying assets, not things. 10 years later, those small pieces had grown into something that paid her, even while she slept. That is the real difference between Daniel and Priya. It was never about how much they earned. It was about where the money went after it landed in their hands. You do not need a fortune to start. You need a habit. Every time money arrives, ask it a job. Is your job to pay me back or to disappear? Lesson 2. The reward that waits. Imagine someone offers you $10 right now, or $20 in 1 month. Which one would you choose? Most people take the $10 now. That single choice, repeated 1,000 times over a lifetime, is one of the biggest reasons some people build wealth and others do not. Wealthy people are not smarter about money. They are usually just more patient with it. They can look at a reward sitting right in front of them and choose to wait, because they see something bigger further down the road. There was a farmer named Okonkwo who planted maize every season. One year, a terrible drought came, and his neighbors ate their seed corn just to survive the week. Okonkwo was hungry too. But he buried his best seeds instead, deep where nothing could reach them, and ate the smaller, weaker grain himself. His neighbors called him foolish. When the rains finally came back, Okonkwo planted those saved seeds, and his harvest that year fed the entire village. His neighbors had protected their comfort for 1 hungry week. Okonkwo had protected his future for 10 years. That is patience. It is not about denying yourself forever. It is about choosing which hunger you are willing to feel now, so that a bigger hunger never comes later. Poor thinking says, I need this comfort today, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Strong thinking says, Tomorrow is exactly why today's comfort can wait. Every time you delay a purchase, you are not punishing yourself. You are training a muscle that very few people ever build. And that muscle, more than any paycheck, decides how your story ends. Lesson 3: The lifestyle trap. Something strange happens to most people when their income grows. Their spending grows right along with it. A raise arrives, and suddenly there is a bigger apartment, a newer car, more dinners out. 5 years later, they earn twice as much as before, and somehow they still have nothing saved. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it is one of the quietest wealth killers there is. If this lesson is helping you see money differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let us know in the comments which idea hit you the hardest. Wealthy people fight this trap on purpose. When their income rises, they do not rush to raise their spending at the same speed. They let a gap grow between what they earn and what they spend, and they send that gap toward assets. The gap itself becomes their real fortune, not the number on their paycheck. Picture two brothers, both promoted at the same company on the same day. One brother celebrated by leasing a brand new truck. The other brother kept driving his old one and quietly increased the amount going into his investments. 10 years passed. The first brother was still leasing trucks, always making a payment, never truly owning anything. The second brother owned his truck outright, owned a piece of several businesses, and had built a foundation his job could never take from him. Self-control is not about being cheap, it is about being intentional. It means asking, before every new expense, will this raise my life, or will it just raise my bills? The people who build wealth are rarely the ones who earned the most. They are the ones who kept the biggest gap between what came in and what went out, and who protected that gap like it was sacred. Lesson 4: Let time do the heavy lifting. Most people want results fast. They want the business to succeed this year, the investment to double this month, the body to change in 2 weeks. Wealthy thinking moves at a different speed. It treats time like a partner, not an enemy. There is a simple idea called compounding. Money that earns a return, and then earns a return, on that return, grows slowly at first, almost invisibly, and then suddenly grows very fast. The tragedy is that most people quit right before the fast part begins, because the slow part felt like nothing was happening. A young baker named Matteo opened a tiny shop that barely made a profit for its first 2 years. Friends told him to close it and take a steady job instead. He almost listened. But he kept the shop open, reinvesting every spare coin back into better ovens and better ingredients. By year 5, that same slow, boring little shop was feeding half the neighborhood, and Matteo owned 3 of them. Own assets, not habits, and Matteo lived that idea long before he could name it. He did not own a job. He owned something that grew while he slept, something that got stronger. Every single year, he stayed patient with it. If you want the fast years, you first have to survive the slow ones. That is not a punishment, and it never was. That is simply the honest, unavoidable price of something real and lasting. Ask yourself honestly, are you building something that only pays you today, or something that will still be paying you in 10 years? The second kind is quieter at first. It is also the only kind that truly sets you free. Lesson 5: Calculated risk, not blind risk. Some people believe wealthy people are just big gamblers who got lucky. That idea is mostly wrong. Careless risk is how people lose everything. Calculated risk is how people build something that lasts. There is a real difference between the two. Blind risk means acting on excitement, a rumor, a feeling that this one thing will surely work out. Calculated risk means studying the situation first, understanding what you could lose, and only moving forward when the possible reward is worth the honest danger. A trader once said that he was not afraid of being wrong. He was only afraid of staying in a bad position after he already knew it was wrong. That single sentence separates most successful investors from most failed ones. Never losing is not the goal. Losing small, learning fast, and never risking so much that one mistake ends the whole game, that is the goal. Think of a young shopkeeper named Grace who wanted to open a second store. Her cousin told her to just do it, trust her gut, and figure out the money later. Instead, Grace spent 3 weeks studying foot traffic, rent costs, and her own numbers from the first store. She found a location with real promise, and she only committed what she could afford to lose if she was wrong. The store succeeded, but even if it had failed, Grace would have survived to try again. That is the wealthy mindset toward risk. Not fear, not blind courage either, just clear eyes, honest numbers, and enough self-control to walk away from a bad bet, no matter how exciting it feels in the moment. Lesson 6. Guard your attention like money. There is one resource wealthy people protect just as fiercely as their cash, and most people never even notice it slipping away. Attention. Where your attention goes, your energy follows, and where your energy goes, your money eventually follows too. Think about how much of a normal day gets spent scrolling through other people's lives, watching what they bought, where they traveled, how perfect their kitchen looks. None of that builds anything. It only builds a quiet hunger to keep up, and that hunger is expensive. It whispers, "Buy this, upgrade that, you deserve it," and slowly, it drains the very gap between income and spending that Lesson 3 told you to protect. A young mechanic named Tomas noticed this pattern in himself. Every evening he scrolled for hours, and every weekend he somehow found something new to buy. He decided to run a simple experiment. For 30 days, he replaced that scrolling time with reading about his trade, about tools, about small business owners who had grown a single garage into something bigger. He did not become rich in 30 days, but something in him shifted. His spending dropped without him even trying, because his mind was no longer fed a constant stream of things to want. What you watch, you eventually want. What you want, you eventually chase. And what you chase, you eventually pay for, one way or another. Protecting your attention is not a small habit. It may be the habit that decides every other habit on this list. Own assets, not habits. Guard your mind the same way you would guard your wallet, because for the wealthy, they are really the same account. Lesson 7. Wealth is an identity, not a number. Here is the deepest truth in this whole lesson. Wealthy people do not become wealthy and then start thinking differently. They think differently first, and the wealth follows later, sometimes years later. The habits come before the bank account, never the other way around. This matters because it changes what you should be chasing. Do not chase a number. Chase a version of yourself who naturally buys assets instead of liabilities, who naturally waits instead of rushing, who naturally protects the gap between income and spending without even having to think about it. Once that identity is real, the money is almost a side effect. There was an old carpenter who trained many young apprentices over the years. He used to say that he was not really teaching them how to cut wood. He was teaching them how to think before they cut, because a careless cut could never be undone. Money works the same way. A careless dollar, spent without thought, can never be called back either. Poor thinking waits for motivation. Strong thinking builds a system so strong that motivation is not even required. Excitement is optional here. What matters is a habit so automatic that it keeps running whether you feel excited about it or not. Patience builds wealth. Not overnight, and not without effort, but steadily, the same way a single seed becomes a forest, one quiet season at a time. The identity comes first, the number comes later. That order can never be reversed. Lesson 8. Small numbers repeated often beat one big miracle. Many people wait their whole lives for one big win, one lucky investment, one huge bonus, one business that suddenly explodes. They imagine wealth arriving in a single dramatic moment like a lightning strike. Real wealth almost never works that way. It is built from small numbers, repeated so often that they eventually become enormous. Think about a single dollar invested every single day for 30 years, growing slowly at a normal rate of return. On its own, that dollar looks like nothing. It cannot buy a coffee. But repeated daily, without missing a single day, across 3 decades, that tiny habit becomes tens of thousands of dollars, built entirely from a number so small most people would not bother picking it up off the ground. There was a cleaner named Wei who worked in an office building for over 20 years. Nobody thought much about her, because her job title was small and her paycheck was small too. But every single week, without fail, Wei set aside a fixed, modest amount, the same small percentage no matter how tight the month felt. She never chased a big miracle investment. She never gambled on a hot tip from a coworker. She simply repeated her small habit with total consistency. When she retired, the people around her were shocked to learn what that quiet, boring consistency had become. This is the part most people skip, because small numbers feel embarrassing. They feel too slow, too weak, almost pointless. But wealthy thinking respects the small number, because it understands something most people forget. It is not the size of the action that builds wealth. It is the repetition of the action, done the same way, again and again, long after it stops feeling exciting. If you remember nothing else from today, remember this. Forget the miracle. Build a habit small enough to repeat forever, and let patience do the rest. Lesson 9. Debt is a tool, not a trap. Most people are taught that all debt is dangerous, and for good reason, because most debt truly is. But wealthy thinking makes a sharp distinction that changes everything. There is debt that buys things which lose value the moment you own them, and there is debt that buys things which earn value the longer you hold them. The first kind is a trap. The second kind, used carefully, can become a tool. A young couple, Marcus and Elena, borrowed money twice in the same year. The first loan bought a large boat they used 4 times before it sat rusting in the driveway, still costing them a payment every single month. The second loan bought a small duplex, where tenants paid rent that covered the loan and left a little extra behind. Both loans felt exciting the day they signed the papers. Only one of them was still working for them 5 years later. The question wealthy thinking always asks before borrowing is simple. Will this debt work for me while I sleep? Or will it simply sit there, waiting to be fed every month with money I could have kept? If the honest answer is that it will only drain you, walk away, no matter how good the offer sounds today. Self-control is not just about resisting purchases. It is also about resisting debt that flatters your comfort instead of building your future. The wealthy are not afraid of debt. They are simply picky about which kind they are willing to carry. Lesson 10. Protect what you have already built. There is a habit almost nobody talks about, and it may be the quietest one of all. Once wealth starts to grow, even a small amount, the wealthy shift part of their attention from only building more to also protecting what already exists. An emergency saved is worth more than an emergency avoided, because it means one bad month never has to undo years of patient work. Think of a shop owner named Halima who spent 6 years slowly building a small chain of 3 stores from nothing. In her 7th year, a fire damaged one location badly. Because she had also built a modest reserve, set aside specifically for moments like this. She rebuilt within 2 months and kept paying her staff the entire time. Her competitor down the street, who had reinvested every single coin back into growth with nothing held in reserve, closed permanently after a similar disaster the following year. Ambition without protection is fragile. It can be undone by a single bad month, a single accident, a single piece of terrible luck that nobody could have predicted. Wealthy thinking respects this. It builds forward with one hand, and it quietly guards what has already been built with the other. Own assets, not habits, but also protect the assets you already own. Because the second half of that sentence is the part most people forget until it is far too late, usually right when they can least afford to learn the lesson. Lesson 11. Surround yourself with a different standard. The people around you set a quiet standard for what feels normal, and normal is a powerful force. If everyone around you spends everything they earn, savings will always feel strange, even a little embarrassing. If everyone around you talks about assets and patience the way most people talk about sports scores, that same behavior will start to feel completely ordinary to you too. A young teacher named Sophia noticed that every friend she had complained about money constantly, yet spent freely on anything new. She slowly built a second circle, just a few people, who talked instead about investing small amounts and reading about business. She did not abandon her old friends. She simply added new conversations to her week. Within 2 years, her own thinking had quietly shifted to match the newer, calmer standard she now heard most often. You do not choose your habits in a vacuum. You absorb them from the 10 or 20 conversations you have most often. Choose carefully who gets to whisper into that space, because their normal will slowly become your normal too, whether you notice it happening or not. Lesson 12. Measure progress, not just income. A paycheck tells you how much came in this month. It never tells you whether you are actually moving forward. Wealthy thinking checks a different number, one most people never look at. Net worth, the simple gap between what you own and what you owe, measured honestly, once or twice a year. A delivery driver named Marcus earned less than most of his friends, yet he tracked this number every January, writing it on a simple piece of paper taped inside a kitchen cabinet. Some years the number barely moved. One year it dropped after a hard season. But because he was watching it, he could see exactly which choices helped and which choices hurt, and he adjusted the following year instead of guessing blindly. Income without a scoreboard is just noise. You can earn a great deal and still go nowhere, or earn very little and still climb steadily, depending entirely on whether you are watching the number that actually reflects your direction. Check it honestly, even when it is uncomfortable, because the discomfort of an honest number is far cheaper than the shock of discovering the truth 10 years too late. Let's bring everything together. Wealthy people are not smarter than everyone else, and most of them did not start with more money than you have right now. What they had, and what you can build starting today, is a different set of rules for how they see a dollar. 1. They buy assets, things that pay them, instead of liabilities, things that quietly drain them. 2. They practice patience, choosing the bigger reward later over the smaller comfort now. 3. They protect the gap between their income and their spending, refusing to let their lifestyle rise as fast as their paycheck. 4. They let time do the heavy lifting, staying patient through the slow, boring years so the fast years can eventually arrive. 5. They take calculated risks, never blind ones, always measuring what they could lose before they measure what they could gain. 6. They guard their attention as fiercely as their money, because what they watch is what they eventually want. 7. They treat debt as a tool, only borrowing for things that can pay them back. 8. They protect what they have already built, keeping a reserve for the bad month nobody can predict. 9. They watch their honest net worth, not just their income, so they always know which direction they are truly moving. None of these rules require you to be rich already. They only require you to start thinking like someone who eventually will be. Remember the idea that carried this whole lesson. Own assets, not habits, and let it actually mean something the next time money reaches your hands. Keep listening, keep learning English, and let your patience grow along with your vocabulary. If this lesson changed how you see money even a little, tell us in the comments which idea you are starting with today. And if you want your mind trained the same way tomorrow, make sure you are subscribed, because this is only the beginning of how far a different way of thinking can take you.